This is the interesting bit, Chris, where you roll out the premium guy who then gets up and then contradicts a lot of the stuff that's already happened yet today, so thanks, nice one. Yeah, so my name's Dan Gray. I'm head of studio for Ustwo Games. Previously made Monument Valley 1, then Monument Valley 2, made a VR game called Land's End, and also a studio made some stuff that wasn't so big before that, so it's always important to remember those things as well. But what I'm going to talk about for roughly the next kind of like 14, 15 minutes is not necessarily just Monument Valley 2, but more our approach to doing premium games and why we might do that and how you can really kind of amplify the benefits of that, rather than just talk about Monument Valley 2. So, quick introduction to myself. I've been working for about 11 years now. Started my career at Lionhead Studios, so really big AAA, working on 200 people teams. Worked there for a few years as a producer after finally leaving and joining Hello Games, so really, really small indie from a big, huge thing. And then kind of settled 5 years ago on the thing I'm doing now, which is this kind of really middle ground kind of section, where we've got about 20 people now. There was 8 people working on Monument Valley, and we've got about 20 people working on 3 different prototypes at the moment. So we've actually scaled back after that. And the thing I really wanted to do when I moved there was, like, we're not owned by a game studio, we're owned by a design studio. Does a lot of client work, a lot of design client work. And it was an environment and a space that I thought if I joined these guys and we started to make games, they were guaranteed to be different just by the very nature of the environment we were in. And the people we had, roughly a third of our team had never made games before joining. But I think that enables us to have a really fresh outlook on the types of ideas we have. So what I actually want to talk about in relation to how to maximize premium games, if that's what you decide to do, is this concept of mass production and small scale. So this is where we go a little bit contradictory to some of the other talks that might be on today. And again, I want to reiterate that this is purely kind of my opinion and the way that I operate my team. Hopefully you can take some things from this. Maybe you can't. Maybe you disagree with some of these things. But that's cool. We've got questions at the end of this, and come and grab me afterwards. But yeah, when we talk about mass production and small scale, I think for us and Ustwo Games, we're not right the way down at this end. We're actually, probably further down the small scale than we are the mass production side of things. But I think where a lot of people go wrong is they're not aware of where they sit on this scale. So usually when you make things for mass production, you've got a huge team and you're going for hundreds of millions or billions of users. Volume is the #1 priority. There's also many, many people in this production line. You're talking about teams with a live ops team that's much bigger than the team we have to develop the game. You've got huge teams, and what that means is that it's kind of there's less option for an individual or a small group of people to have an impact on the thing they truly want to make. At least in my opinion, anyway. I think if you are a mobile developer and you do make the decision to have a massively kind of like volume-centric game, I think that the idea of profits are more of a goal for you. I mean, we're pretty fortunate that we're a successful premium mobile developer, but I think anyone in this room would probably say we're losing out on money by continuing to make premium games instead of to make something in the free-to-play space. So we've definitely made that decision for us internally, that we're going to forego potentially the riches of spending the next year making a free game and continuing to make paid games. What I do think is, and this is the controversial thing, is I think that when you are going for scale, a lot of the time that results in quite derivative design. It's like, imagine you're going to design a shirt and you're designing it for Walmart in the example that I have. You're not necessarily going to have a wide variety of different shapes and styles and cuts and designs to the items you're making. You're probably going to make a t-shirt that fits the average man, right? It's not necessarily going to be special or personal in any way. It's just going to satisfy the biggest volume of people, and that's great. But I think that you forego other things in that. On the other side of things, when you decide to make something that's a little bit more small scale and personal to you, a lot of the time that means that you focus on the quality over the quantity of the experiences that you have. Conversely, if you're the person who's designing shirts for Walmart, you might have someone on the other side of things who gets to take some risks. They go, okay, I'm going to use this fabric and I'm going to do it in this cut and it's going to be this style that hasn't been done yet, because the consequences aren't so severe. This person's not going to be putting tens of millions of dollars into developing something. So at least in our opinion, and the things that we focus on, is because there are fewer people within this production pipeline, we can affect things and we can take risks and we can say, a good example of that, we've talked about it a lot, but if I went out and asked for money to make Monument Valley 1 originally, no one would have given us money to make that game. And I specifically remember having a conversation with a platform holder earlier on in the days in 2014, where they were saying, so the game has no leaderboards, has no achievements, like has no adverts and it has no IEP. Like it doesn't have any of these things. And I'm like, no. They're like, how long is it? I was like, it's about 90 minutes. They were like, oh, okay. So it's going to be really difficult for us to support you in any way because we didn't tick those boxes of the things you're told you're supposed to tick in order to be successful. If you're making a game from formulas and from A/B testing and user testing, then you probably wouldn't result in something like Monument Valley or a lot of the more successful premium games. Because even though I'm proud of the amount of money we've made on those titles, I'm sure that amount of money wouldn't satisfy a board of investors. So again, I think it's important to identify the positives and negatives for doing this. Equally, you could argue that we talk about Monument Valley. You guys are developers here. You've probably heard of this game. But we definitely don't have 1 billion users, like some of the more successful games that might be talking today. So, I mean, equally, it's not necessarily about money either. It's about wanting to reach a wide variety of people. We also want to do that, but with a certain type of game. So like this is a completely jokey meme that I threw in, and it's really unfair. But the idea of let's make a game where you tap things and there's no gameplay and you just give us money and they all make the space, right? The reason why I wanted to put this up is because, I mean, even when we talk about icons on the App Store, if you look through a chart of what is successful, and actually, like, I actually really did like the previous guy's talk from King as well, but when you see that top chart of like top 20 free games, it actually makes me sad that they're all the same. Not happy. Like, I don't necessarily see that as a good thing. I think it's great that some of these titles have long-term longevity, but to me, I see it as an example of a lack of innovation, not kind of like innovation in kind of long-term success. And I think that, like this, to me, this example and this whole idea of this icon set is an example of you having to do a certain thing and having designed things in a certain way to make it successful to a broad range of people. And I personally believe it inhibits your innovation and creativity on a personal level if you're doing it for personal reasons. So I think that, again, we talk about these kind of two sides of the coin, these two sides of the spectrum. So what can you do to really amplify that? Once you've acknowledged the fact that if you're a premium mobile game developer, you probably don't have a 100-person team, you probably have a small team working on something. What can you do to set yourself apart? And again, this is how we approach things, and hopefully you can take something from this. And one of those things is with art style. Again, we can take risks. We're not going to make, the same old cartoony, cutesy, approachable to everyone, offends nobody art styles or something we do, because there's lots of stuff out there. You're going to be fighting a battle that you can't win. You don't have the resources or you don't have the time to fight that battle. But what you do have is you're like the smaller, more maneuverable ship against this huge behemoth of a battleship next to you. You can take risks, you can go in different directions, and you can take that time. So in terms of art styles, we look at some other successful premium games. Hidden Folks is a successful game from last year. Do you think that you're probably going to see a really successful, billion user game that looks like this? Probably not. You'd probably get thrown out straight away. But this is, on a smaller scale, again, even when you talk about profits, it's probably okay for a 3-person team to make something like this and end up with a couple of $1 million. That's success for those people. So I think financial success is always relative to what you're trying to achieve. So again, trying to take risks with art style and taking the time to find your own voice. And that really comes down to personality as well. So again, taking those risks and coming up with gameplay and injecting your art style and the music and the whole audio-visual piece of this with personality and especially story. Again, some other examples of games that I believe really push this. If you're going to go play Old Man's Journey, you can feel with the way you interact with something that it's had love put into it. It's not gone through a machine of what statistically retains users longer or shorter. It's gone through the machine of, am I passionate about this thing I'm working on right now? And I believe that if you are, and you're kind of true to the things that you're interested in, it will show in the final products you make. And it'll set your product apart to the kind of free offerings that might be there. Another example of that is Frame 2 from last year. Again, probably another game that wouldn't be able to work in a free space. Again, you can feel the personality, you can feel the interaction, and I mean, all these things have something in common as well, and that's the length of the experience. We can't compete on that scale where you're going to go and make a 100,000-hour game loop and retain people for that amount of time. At least what our focus is, and from speaking to other premium mobile game developers, the focus is, how can I put all of my effort into the most fantastic, polished 90 minutes, 2 hours, hour short experience I can do? Okay, you might not be playing it, a year later, you're probably going to remember it. You're probably not going to, pick up the next free thing, and you're going to pick up the next free thing, and you're probably not going to have that same amount of loyalty to things. It's probably going to stay in your heart and minds. What I'd be really curious about while I'm here as well is, mainly just from a position of not knowing, that, like, are there any free games that focus on story as a directive? I mean, I'd be really curious to have some conversations with people after this, is that I believe it's something that is not necessarily possible to do. It's not cost effective. So like when we made Forgotten Shores for Monument Valley 1, we spent 10 months and 6 people making an expansion we sold for $2. Now, when you think about supporting a game post-release, that's probably the least cost-efficient form of monetization there's ever been. It cost us, I don't know, maybe like £500,000 to make, like in total. And yeah, financially it's done well because we're fortunate enough that Monument Valley is an outlier. I think that's worth pointing out as well as part of this, that Monument Valley 1 and 2 are outliers, and if we can replicate something like that, again, we're lucky. So it's important to remember to take what you can from it. But I'd be really curious to know whether story can be something that we can do, because that's something that I tell my team to focus on, because it's something that the free games aren't doing, which brings kind of onto the next point when you talk about competitors. One thing I do truly believe is that you need to analyze the marketplace and look at the genre or type of game that you're making and ensure that there's no free alternatives to that. Like, what do you think is going to happen if you decide to go, I'm going to make this really ace paid match 3 game, right? And people are going to go on the search and they're going to find 50, and there's going to be yours that's paid and there's going to be 49 that's free. Good luck making someone download yours as opposed to the 49 other free ones. So I think it's important to kind of analyze the marketplace, look at the free competitors, and make the game that you're making undeniably premium. Like with Monument Valley, we try to focus on every single chapter being so distinct and memorable. Mechanics that we're not going to use again. Like, the focus isn't let's create a mechanic that people are going to come back and interact with every day for the next 5 years. It's like, let's make a mechanic that's going to last these players 5 minutes, but that they're probably going to remember for years. Again, like making ourselves undeniably premium in that sense, doing things you wouldn't otherwise be able to do in a free and long game. And just that polish is absolutely everything. Again, like we spent so much time making the games we make, and it's the reason why we don't do expansions that often. But your average Monument Valley 2 level, like I remember this level that's called Trees in Monument Valley 2, took us like 4 or 5 months to make something that lasts about 7 minutes. But it's worth it, because when we see in screenshots, it looks undeniably premium. It looks like something you really want to engage with. So I mean, on Monument Valley, taking influence from things outside of video games as well. Like, if a lot of the free games are looking at what the trends are, okay, pirates are really hot this year. Like, Star Wars is really good, sci-fi is really good. We can look at the top 10 highest grossing, and space is really popular, let's do space. Like, going in a different direction, and for us that means taking inspiration. So this board is for one of the Monument Valley 2 levels, and the visual reference here is Candy, drag queens, and Nicki Minaj music videos. So actually, Candy, conversely, not that peculiar as a mobile game topic. And we carry these visual reference boards all the way around the studio with us, and they're personal to that person, so other people can go up and take notes. And I guess that's worth another thing pushing as well. When I talk about that risk and kind of bespoke nature of making games, allowing one's personality to be injected into something if they want to do it. Like, every person has a voice within that team. Again, looking at more visual reference, looking at things like old architectural styles, Renaissance painters, even like poetry in this sense. Where can you take inspiration from outside of video games? Because if you are going to live in a premium space, it's about doing something completely different that you can't get anywhere else. So looking at games that already exist probably isn't the best method for doing that. And again, that focus on character and story. Giving characters and story, like this idea of a mother and child. Like, there's not many games that focus on a mother and child as like a combination of characters to lead an experience. Again, even just saying that, seeing something a little bit out of the ordinary in the mobile space, gives you something to remember that game over other games. And what that results in, I mean, for us, this is really hard to get to this point where something looks visually striking and different. And again, giving people completely different art styles and feelings. We want you to look at this picture and believe in the loneliness and the sadness and the atmosphere of this against this picture, which is supposed to be full of joy and excitement. Again, making every single screen different and memorable. And this is the whole game we ended up with. And hopefully it results in something like this, which is my favorite video from Monument Valley 2 launch, something that people remember.
It was a blast. The best thing. I don't think you're going to be able to hear it.
Did you know what
did it for me. The fact that you've got values in there. It's not about violence. It's not about killing. It's about, you know, when you speak about mother and child and that relationship, that's so precious. And you just got me.
Like whenever we make stuff, maybe it's kind of like.
So in this sense, it's what I found really important. This is from launch week of Monument Valley 2. It's two people who are just in the Apple Store with no intention of playing games, no free games, no any games. But they've managed to be enticed by the story of a mother and child and values and taking something from the experience. It's not, you know, 2 minutes when you're on the train as a time killer like doing Sudoku in the back of the newspaper. It's something they're going to take and remember, and you can convert people that don't consider themselves to be gamers yet. So hopefully we've got enough time for questions at the end. So basically anything whatsoever.
Okay, come on, big round of applause. We have time for one question. We've got a big round of applause first for Dan for that. That was, I hope you got a sense of the passion that Dan and us two.
A little bit all over the place.
No, it's good. There are games with passion. I actually went to your launch office of Monument Valley 2 and they invited all their family and it's amazing. So has anybody got a question for the most successful premium games company in
I don't think that statement's true. Don't listen to
But one of them, anyway. Have we got a question? There's a gentleman there. And I can't. It's a bit bright in my face.
Hi. Thanks. Great talk. And I completely agree with you that there's a space for premium games because, well, you know the Bartle types. Basically, mobile free-to-play games cannot satisfy an explorer type. Stories and worlds and stuff. So it's really sad that there's this little of them. But my question, the reason why we aren't ourselves looking into this is that we don't know how many games can the market really support. I mean, there is only one game of the year per year, and you guys and Frogmind with their Badlands have been doing great, but they're the games of the year. Do you have an estimate? How many can the market support?
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, they were both 4 years ago. So Monument Valley 2 wasn't, say, Apple Game of the Year for that featuring. Frogmind stuff is a long time ago as well. Like, there are other things like the examples I gave. Like, you are right, though, where there does tend to be probably a handful of games every year that really kind of take that thunder. So it is smaller. It is smaller in that sense. But equally, if they're the types of things you want to make, is that a positive for you as a creator? Like, if that space is becoming smaller, is that because less people are making them? Or is that because the market can't support that many games? Like, I don't know. But I definitely know from speaking to peers and other kind of like studio heads that there are new people coming on the scene all the time making these kind of games. And you can make a game as one or two people, get a little bit of featuring along the way, and still turn a decent enough profit that you can make another 2 or 3 games in the future. Like, I do believe that is possible, without being the size of Monument Valley or Badlands, for example.
Okay, you can ask Dan small questions outside the room. He's got to go. Got to keep it relentless.
Right, thanks, mate.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks a lot.